Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Brynka Beacon. Our topic today is Your Mail Center Has a Brand. We have a very special guest I'll be introducing in a minute. As usual, we provide these Brynka Beacons on a quarterly basis, and the idea is to listen, learn, and participate. We really encourage interaction during this presentation. It always helps for a good conversation to share our ideas. And the other thing we want to know is for future Brynka Beacons, we want to know what you're interested in. If you have any topics you'd like us to focus on, we're all ears. So let us know in the chat, and we'll gather your topics and consider them for a future presentation. Today's hosts from Brynka, we have Brenda Fick, our president, Peggy Smith, who's our logistical and business solutions specialist. Mark Fenning is on the call. He's our director of business development. And my name is Todd DeVries, and I'm our chief operating officer. But our special guest speaker today is Mike Porter. He's the president of Print Mail Consultants and PMC Content Services. Before I introduce Mike, again, I want to reiterate, we really want this to be an interactive session. Use that chat button, and we'll be moderating the questions that you have and the comments that you have at any time during the presentation. We'll have little spots, little pauses where we can answer your questions as we go through. So before I hand it over to Mike, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio on him. He's, as I mentioned before, he's the president of Print Mail Consultants and PMC Content Services. He's a veteran document industry professional, helping organizations optimize their print and mail production operations. He's written his popular column, In the Trenches, in Mailing Systems Technology magazine for many years. PMC Content Services is a division of Print Mail Consultants. They work with small and medium-sized businesses, primarily in the printing and mailing customer communication space, to help them achieve business objectives through content marketing. So with that, Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself, maybe expand on the bio, and start your presentation.
Thank you, Todd. Great to be with you today. Yes, I've been in the document industry for a long time. I actually started in the service bureau business back in the 1970s in the mainframe and impact printer days. So lots of history there, doing lots of different kinds of applications, most of which ended up in the mail. Also worked for some leaders in the industries, Xerox and Bell and Howell. And I've been doing consulting for a number of years, helping people with their operational challenges and integrating new technologies and things like that. And for about 14 years, we've been doing the content services where we create informational content for companies that are in that industry, whether they're service providers or they're vendors in the industry, to help them to develop leads and nurture them and stay top of mind and increase brand awareness. So that's kind of what the background on me.
Wonderful.
So today we're going to talk about about mail centers and branding, and we've talked about this a little bit. I've written about this a few times in my column in Mailing Systems Technology, but I think a good question to start off with is exactly what is a brand? Because a lot of times we think about brands as being something that large organizations have, like Coca-Cola or Nike or IBM. They have logos and they have a brand guidelines and custom colors and taglines and spokespeople and other elements like that. But really, a brand is something that is conceived outside of your organization. It's what other people think about you when you're not in the room, and it doesn't have to include all those expensive elements. It's really a perception, an awareness, an appreciation maybe And it doesn't necessarily require a massive management team to develop the brand or promote it, or millions of dollars like those multinationals have at their disposal. So we're calling it a brand, but maybe a term like an image or a perception is more comfortable term, that might apply. If brand sounds like it's just too foreign to you, then think of it as more of a perception or an image that you have. The reason we have those in a mailing and print center is that I think most of those centers that I've been in are a bit on the passive side. They're sort of the endpoint of a workflow of which they often have no control over. Their job is to get the work out and accurately and do it on time, and they're very focused on those kinds of issues, and great people that work in that industry to do that. But the people that they serve don't necessarily know what the facility can do for them or how to exploit their expertise. A lot of people that work in this industry know a lot about mail. Can you how do you address an envelope? How do you save on postage? How do you design a mail piece to make sure that it meets the requirements, the mailing requirements? What are the different classes? All those kinds of things that users of the print mail department, whether it's an in-house department or an outsourced service provider, need to know. It's helpful for them to have that information, but they maybe just don't know that they can tap into that in your organization, or they're afraid to, or they're intimidated by the thought of that. So having a brand for your printing and mailing center helps to encourage that kind of connection between you and your customers. Because if you don't have a brand, then people maybe aren't utilizing your facilities like they could, which results in underutilization, which is not a good thing, especially when communications or conversations like budget cuts come up. Then it looks like your equipment is not being fully utilized, or you have people that have some idle time, and you lose some budgeting, which then makes matters worse because then you can't invest in new technologies that are happening in the industry and in the communications business, things that maybe your customers would like to take part in. So then they go elsewhere to get those services, which then makes your utilization worse. That's not a cycle you really want to be in. So that's sort of my idea about branding and print mail centers. Is it's a subtle sort of a thing as opposed to something that a huge consumer brand might undertake, but it's all still important.
Excellent, Mike. Now, Peggy, Brenda, Mark, or the audience, does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next slide, just in general about the purpose of having a brand?
I don't have any comments, but I'm hopeful that other than just asking the audience here to share or comment on any brand that you might have developed and what it has done for you. So again, we really want to make this interactive. So if you would please share, that would be fantastic. I know a couple of you out there have a brand, so we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Peggy. I'd love to hear about that as well.
Okay.
All right. Well, while we receive those questions and other brand examples, why don't we move on to the next slide, Mike? Okay.
Please do.
There you go.
Am I driving? So do they really need a brand? We kind of talked about this a little bit already. Yeah, and what does it do for them? Well, I would argue that every print mail center already has a brand, and it's whether you're controlling it or you're leaving it up to others to do that, because everyone has a perception about what it is that you do. And the difference is that if you leave this up to other folks to make that determination, they may have some perceptions about what your organization does, or how well it does that, based on incomplete information, or even erroneous information that they heard from somebody else or someone else's experience. So the need for a brand and for you to take a little bit more control there then allows you then to kind of guide that perception that people have of what you do, which is always good for business, whether you are doing that as a outside service provider, or you're an in-house department, serving your organization. You want people to use those facilities. You've made an investment in people and in training and in equipment and software and maintenance and all those kinds of things. Those things should be utilized. And if you don't control that brand, then you're kind of leaving it up to others to decide why you're important, and that's not a really good thing. So so it shows that you have things under control as well. If you're actually actively promoting your brand and doing that on a consistent basis, it shows that, oh, I'm paying attention to things. We're proud of what we do, that we're an important part of the organization, and people can trust us, they can count on us, and that's really important when it comes to customer retention, or new business, or referrals, or expansion, or opportunities as things come along. So I would say that's how I would answer that question, is that you really have to have a more of an active, participating kind of ongoing effort to keep reminding people about what it is that you're there for and what you can do for them. Otherwise, they're going to form their own opinions, and those may not always be positive.
Excellent. Another quick pause if anybody has a question. All right.
Let me expand on that just a little bit before we move on, Todd.
Sure.
I kind of think that there's maybe three things that come in with having a brand. I call them trust, differentiation, and emotional connection. And trust comes from having a consistent and a professional image. If you're taking care of your brand image, then it probably, you're paying attention to customer work as well, and that's the perception that you want your customers to have. I think of it like trying to sell a dirty car versus a clean one, right? The condition of that car, whether the cleanliness, doesn't have any guarantee of any mechanical health, or health, but buyers maybe will skip the test drive if they look at the car and they see that it's dirty and it doesn't look like it's been taken care of. So maybe you skimped on maintenance. Maybe you didn't, maybe the brakes need help, or you haven't been doing your oil changes, or it's been a while since you did the tune-up. So by maintaining that brand image, then you give people a sense that you're actually taking care of the rest of your organization as well. This is especially important for companies that deal with information that is of a personal nature, whether it is health information or financial information or any other personally identifiable information that you're handling in the documents that you process, right? So trust is a big deal there. People are not going to entrust you with that data and those documents unless they feel that you have adequate facilities and controls and procedures in order to safeguard those kinds of things. Differentiation probably applies more to the outsourced service providers than it is to the implants. And for them, they're in a very competitive environment. So all mail centers do, almost similar things, right? They all, most of them do the printing. They all put letters into envelopes. They get them to the post office. They may help to create to achieve the best postage rates, those kind of things. So it's good to have a niche that you're known for, whether that is a particular process or a particular vertical market that you serve or whatever that is. That differentiation helps you to kind of stand out from the crowd, and it can't be low cost or great customer service, because everyone says that, and pretty much everyone is good at those kinds of things. If you're a really awful providing awful service, you're not going to be in business very long in this business, because it is very competitive. An example I can give you is with the service bureau that I work with. We had a niche that we played in for credit unions. In the region where we were operating, we did 40 or 50 different credit unions. We would print and mail their statements every month. And we got to have a great reputation among that community, such that when an employee would leave one credit union and go work for another, when their new credit union was looking for someone to do their statements, our name came up, and we got an opportunity to be at that table and have that sales discussion, just because of the reputation that we had of doing it for so many others in the region. And that even extended to the software providers. There was only a handful of them that provided software to the credit unions. They got to know us, so then they could refer us as well. So really handy for things like that. The last thing I mentioned was an emotional connection. And this is where you sort of humanize the business, right? You can associate some positive emotions with the brand. For the outsourcing people, then that helps with customer retention and referrals. And for the in-house operations, well, it might affect you during budgeting or expansion plans, or every in-house operation that I've been familiar with at one time or another has dealt with the subject of outsourcing the work, shutting down the in-house operation and moving all that work outside. And that usually is done from an accounting standpoint, from a cost and numbers standpoint, not taking into account any of those relationships that the different departments and groups that you serve have with the printing and mailing center, and the value that brings. So having that emotional connection where you can let people know that there's actual human beings, interesting people that are working in there, by publishing employee profiles or their achievements or milestones, or if volunteer efforts, if you do that as a department, for instance, things like that, to actually put a face on that, and to get away from the perception that it's just a black box where data comes in and mail goes out. So those
Right.
are the three things that really stand out to me when you talk about, well, why do we need a brand, and what does it do for me?
Makes sense. We did have one comment in the chat. Mark, are you audible there?
Yes, yes. Um, so the one thing that I found in coming to our university was that it wasn't so much that we had a negative connotation, but people didn't have an accurate connotation of what the mail center did. So they knew that that we would send out mail, but they didn't know that we sold stamps. They didn't know that we did bulk mailing. They didn't know that we actually sold postcards and international postage for those postcards especially for our international students. So I think it's not only that they may not have a positive attitude towards you, but they may not have an accurate picture of what you can do. And if suddenly they go, oh, you can do that, oh, you can do that too, that will draw hopefully more people to you, even if they just want to give it a try, but if you wow them the first time, they'll be back.
Mark, what
That's
did you
an
do?
excellent point, Mark. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to ask Mark, what did you do to overcome that hurdle?
So what I did is fairly early on after I started in '06 is I went to the group and I did 8 training sessions on what the new shape-based postage was going to look like. And people were amazed that someone that had as little as experience as I did could tell them so much information about what the changes were that were coming down. And at the end of that presentation, I said, "Oh, by the way, did you know that we will sell Christmas stamps?" Because it was right around, I was probably doing this in November. I said, "We will start selling Christmas stamps. And if you want to pre-order them, just give me your order. Here's the form you can fill out, and we'll get those ordered for you so you don't have to wait in line at the post office." And the smiles, especially on the people who do Christmas cards, was very great. And so we did a lot of things that were small but meant a lot to people. And suddenly we started doing more bulk mailings because of that, which I was so disgusted at how much was going outside when we could do it inside, and the cost that they were paying when we didn't charge for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd
That's a
like to
great
add to that,
story.
Mark. That's a really good point, being able to, have a brand, but also be able to talk about offer webinars to your internal group, and have them understand what it is that you do. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. So not even once a year, just as often as you can, just a blurb, if you don't have a website, how important that is, a blurb of something going on for the month, let them know about the postage changes and things like that. But the one question I had also, many times, well, in particular with universities, you have a public relations office that may be very restrictive to what it is that, or how you can brand your services. How do you overcome, or how do you work with internal PR so that you can develop your brand, and not be prohibited?
Yeah, that's a good point, Peggy. There's a difference between an outward-looking effort and an inward-looking effort. So, in a case where you've got uh, uh, a PR department and you're an in-house operation, your customers are internal. Now, you may have external customers as well. Some do. And there, yes, you would definitely need to adhere to the branding guidelines that the PR department has set up. I've worked with those before, and they have some strict ideas about local usage and taglines and colors and stationery and all kinds of things like that. Um, but but for a lot of your internal branding, as long as you're within normal guidelines, you're not being too edgy. I think you're okay there. I don't think they'd have a plan. And if you have a concern there and you think it might be some objections, then I would run that by them first. Just have them approve that before you do it. A lot of the things that we're doing, just like Mark was describing, are pretty subtle. Going to a meeting, or putting together a little presentation that just gets the word out. It's not like a large scale marketing campaign.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent insight, both Peggy and Mark. Thanks for chiming in. Mike, should we move on to the next slide?
Yes. Perfect timing, by the way. So outsourced providers versus in-house operations. And we talked about this a little bit, but we have customers, even if we're an in-house operation, whether that is in a university environment, as most of our callers are today, or they're from commercial businesses. Customers still have to be aware of your mail center's capabilities, just like Mark was saying, and have confidence that you can do that. And I've got an example which coincidentally mirrors what Mark was telling us. I was with a company that managed a print and mail center for a large company, and we had a contract with them that included a minimum page count per month. So they paid for a certain number of pages to be printed, whether they did it or not. And what I found after joining the team and doing a little bit of research is that there was a lot of work that was going to the outside. Departmental admins were sending work to places like at the time Kinko's, or other outside services to do different kinds of jobs, or they were doing them within the department, um, uh, which was pretty awful. So we found out that by doing some outreach and telling them what we did and how we put things together, then we could help them quite a bit. Because what was happening was, for instance, a department would put together a mailing job on their own, and it was bad in three different ways. One, it cost them more money to do it that way because the cost per page to print on their departmental printers was much higher than what we charged to do it in the mail center on our high volume printers. Two, because they didn't send it to the mail center to begin with, it didn't count against the monthly minimum, so the company ended up paying for those pages twice, because once that they printed them and once when we didn't print them. And then three, sometimes they weren't up to date on mailing requirements, and so they would put together pieces. They would come to the mailroom to be metered and mailed, and sometimes sealed, and we'd have a hard time with it. They wouldn't run through the equipment very well. They had issues where they didn't know how to establish where the address block was supposed to be on the letter, so it didn't always line up in the window of the envelopes very well. All those kinds of things that were happening. So once we started going out to their meetings, and I just asked for some time on their departmental meetings, and I went in with a few slides, showed them what it is that we do, showed them how we could save them some time and some money. I gave them templates so that when they created documents that went in those window envelopes, they knew where they could print and where they couldn't, and where the address block had to go, all those kinds of things. So that really helped to bring many of those jobs back in-house, to do those where they should have been to begin with. And so they cut down on having to spend the money to do those outside, and they contributed to the monthly minimum so that they ended up getting the most bang for their buck when they paid that bill to us at the end of the month.
Interesting. Any comments, questions? All right, Mike, I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Yes.
Oops, hold on 1 minute, Mike. I think we did have something in the chat.
Sure.
The comment is, that is something we do as well. Set up short videos to inform customers on simple mail procedures.
Perfect. There's so many things you can do, right? Mark was talking about the shape-based change that happened in 2006, 2005, around in there, which saved a bunch of money for people when they were able to turn flats into letters. Something that's easy to do. Tell them about aspect ratios, about how you don't want to design a square mailing piece unless you want to pay that non-machinable surcharge on every piece. All sorts of things. addressing, move updates, all these kinds of things that people in the mailing business know about, but that the folks that are outside and upstream from you most of the time, and making those decisions about how things are going to be when you finally see them, help them to make better decisions by giving them more information. That's a great
Absolutely.
idea.
Thanks for chiming in there, Dale. Appreciate it. Oh, he has another comment. Address is a big deal for both outgoing and incoming mail.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about incoming mail. Uh, yeah, a big deal, and keeping track of where those individuals are
Right.
as they move about the organization, if it's incoming mail, or if they've left the organization, who that mail should go to, all those issues. Yeah, kind of separate from the outbound side, but definitely something that you can help to educate people about those kinds of things. If you're seeing mail coming into the organization from a certain source and it's always got the wrong kind of routing information, especially if you use like routing codes in order to distribute mail on courier routes, things like that, then you can communicate that back to the recipients of that mail and say, hey, get a hold of these people that are sending you mail and have them update their records.
Thanks for chiming in again, Dale. Good comments.
I could probably just add a little bit to that. And I think about Washington University and the name that we called ourselves and the abbreviation Mail and Receiving Services, Mars, and I thought, oh, do we want people to think about us as Mars? But I really thought it was very clever, and it got people to thinking. And you do so whatever you call yourself, if you come up with a brand or you have your own logo, utilize that wherever you can in all of your communications, even on your screens, that you might have a kiosk or something as people walk up, but in particular also in those emails, so that people can begin to associate you with that service. So I just think about that. The Mars I really liked, and we really did expand upon that, and we had a lot of fun doing videos, YouTube videos and things like that, to share information. And again, just to make sure that your website have that brand as well, as succinctly as possible.
Yeah, good point. And I think that's great. I think there's a lot you can do with that acronym. I think that's terrific. So some other things that you can do as far as building a brand and continuing to promote it. I'm big on information and education to affect the perception of an audience, as you might think, because that's one thing that we do for our customers is creating that kind of content. But they don't need to be sales pitches all the time. And matter of fact, they shouldn't be, because people get tired of reading that sort of thing. And part of the key in maintaining a brand is consistency. And it's just like marketing. They say in marketing you have to have 7 touches or 9 touches or 11 touches before you can affect somebody to make to complete an action or to make a purchase. Well, the same thing is applicable to branding. You've got to keep reminding people, because if all you did is publish an email 6 months ago, they're not going to that's not going to be cemented in their mind. You're not going to change that perception. So you have to be consistent in doing those kinds of things. And the way you do that is to give them some relevant and useful information, something that they want to read, that they want to consume, whether that is a video, or it is an email, or it is a guide, or it is a template like I described, or a handy chart, or a calendar. When's the best days to mail before Christmas? all those kinds of things are useful information and will keep people engaged and keep your brand in front of them, so they're constantly exposed to what it is that you're trying to communicate there. Um, and as Peggy mentioned, being consistent with your logos and your typefaces and your colors and your terminology, just like the big brands do, but it doesn't really cost a lot of money to do that. You just pick something and that works for you and is relevant to your values in your organization, and stick with it. And as long as you do that, then there's a reason why by every time you see an ad for Home Depot, it's got Home Depot orange in it, right? It's because everybody recognizes that color. And they pay extra to put that color on everything that they print, because it's usually a custom color. So the use of those kinds of things forms an impression in the brain, and repetition helps to cement that in there as well. You can use web pages, social media, business cards, signage in your operation, uniforms if you use them, um, newsletters, blog posts, email signatures, podcasts and webinars. There's all kinds of like educational kinds of things. They don't have to be long. They don't have to be professionally produced. They don't have to be extremely fancy. It doesn't take a whole lot of preparation to put these things together, and then keep on distributing them. A nice thing for some organizations, especially in-house organizations, is things like open houses or private tours, like for a department or for the admins, on the 13th floor or whatever it is, to present the kinds of things that you do. Have the people love to see the machines work. Have them come down, take a look at the machine, have a cookie and a soft drink or something, and just chat about what are the kind of things that they are doing in their departments or the group that they're in. And you'll undoubtedly uncover opportunities there that you didn't even know existed before. So I guess the long-term strategy is to find some things that are working for you that you can accomplish on a consistent basis. If it's too much work, it won't get done. So do some simple things, start small, and then add things as you can, and just keep doing it over and over and over again, and staying in your niche, staying on your message, and avoid the kind of one-off kind of an attempt, because that probably won't have a lasting effect. And that's my advice for building and maintaining a brand for Mail Center. It doesn't have to be really difficult. It just takes a little bit of thought and an hour or two of extra work, a month, and you can make a difference.
Excellent, Mike.
Yeah.
We have a couple of comments. I think, Peggy, you had your
Yep.
hand raised, and I know that we
Well-
have a very insightful comment from Steve that I'd like to get to as well when you're done.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to point out. I'd very much like, for you to cover Steve Burns' comment about the communication and making opportunities get in front of your company or your campus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to read it. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, Mike, it's detailed, so it might take me a minute to get through it, but it's outstanding. Steve says, communication, making those opportunities to get in front of your company or campus. Every rate increase, get out there. Even if it's a rate increase that might not impact them, let them know that. They're probably hearing about these rate increases on NPR or the news, so get out there and be that resource that informs them before they hear about it somewhere else, and they're left wondering how it might impact them. And if it does impact them, communicate that you will be reaching out to those that it will impact. Like you mentioned, Mike, it builds trust and comfort when you do this. Build an email list with all of your main customers and send regular, informative messages, even if it's as simple as a temporary out of the norm closure. The best part, it doesn't cost a dime. That's a great comment, Steve.
Yeah, perfect. And with rate changes, you got an opportunity to do that twice a year. So it's kind of built in.
Right. Peggy, did you have something to add to that?
I was on mute, but no, that's perfect and appreciate that insight. It's constant communication. And as Steve said, being able to get out there as often as you can and communicate your services, and it'll make you um, out make you more visible, and people will understand. Well, they are really a great resource. Let me go to them. Rather than try to find out my own way. I mean, they might have the answer.
Yeah, it can has a tendency also to make your work easier from inside the mail center, right? Because the better informed people are, then they're less likely like to show up 10 minutes before your deadline with with an hour-long project that they want out that day and get disappointed, or that will put together, a mailing list for you that is formatted incorrectly, and you've got to do a lot of work to rearrange things in order to make it work, and you can do a mail merge onto a letter or something like that.
Excellent. Okay, Mike, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which I think really is kind of an open Q&A session. If for anybody that has any questions regarding branding, now's the time to raise your hand or put something in the chat that we can run by Mike. Now's the time. Or Peggy, Mark, with your vast experience in the industry, if you have any other comments, feel free to share.
Brenda, yes.
All right, nothing at
Well,
this
Brenda can
time.
share, yeah.
I'm going to move
You
on
must have done
to,
a good job. Yeah.
all right, I'm going to move on to if anybody has any comments, feel free to continue to share. We'll keep our eye on that chat button. Mike, you do have two websites that one is with your consulting services and the other is with your writing and content. Did you have any comments about what distinguishes these two websites?
Yeah, we did that just to confuse people. What happened? What happened is the company started as a consulting firm. So that's all we did at the beginning when we formed this company, and we called it Print Mail Consultants. And we still do that work. We work with document operations, usually on the high volume end, but not always. And we'll tackle things like improving productivity, or reducing errors, or implementing new technologies, or we've done a number of expansion or consolidation studies, or in-source or outsource studies, those kinds of things, all on the kind of document operations side. And then, as I mentioned earlier, about 14 years ago, we started creating content for mostly small to medium-sized companies and organizations that are in the document business. So we'll create blogs and white papers and ebooks and those kinds of custom content for them, for their websites and their newsletters. And then we help them promote that. We help them with social media and those kinds of things, and lots of other things that we do on those sites as well. So that's the content services part of the business, and we do both still. So that's why we've got the two websites, but they're two totally distinct sort of offerings that we have.
Right. I noticed you could toggle between the two websites easily too. So that's
Yes.
helpful.
Yep.
Excellent.
And rather than, not knowing where you want to start, that might be a really good resource for some thoughts, to begin to develop your brand and to begin to incorporate communication. And I think about, every time you see a presentation, you go somewhere, there's always a template. Create your own template, create your brand that you can share. as Brynka does there, as Brenda is showing our backdrop for those of us who can use it. Just share that as often as you can in all of your communication. People will recognize you.
And nice segue there, Peggy. So Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next couple of slides. Mike, thank you very much for the information. Fantastic stuff. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mike, very much for coming on the Brynka Beacon. I think branding is one thing that is so important for your customer, your clients, to know what you do and how you do it. And building that brand will really give you that awareness throughout the industry. So in the industry, one of the trade shows that Brynka presents in and has presented for the last couple of years, and this year is no different. It's going to be Peggy Smith. She's going to be presenting in 2 sessions, and I think you also have a roundtable, correct? Possibly. So we'll be there. And Mike will also be there as a featured speaker. So we will both be at Mailcom. Hopefully you can come and visit us. The Brynka Beacon that we're doing today will be up on our Brynka website for you to view if you want to later on. The Brynka Beacon there is going to be one in April, but I'd be really interested to hear what you would like to talk about. The Brynka Beacon was totally established for our business partners, those that maybe we don't do business with, but they may listen to our presentations or look at our website or, our LinkedIn page. So the Brynka Beacon is free to all of our business partners. And we really like to talk about those things that we think are valuable to you. So if you have any particular topic, please let us know. You can always send an email to me at brenda.thick@brynka.com and or any of our, Mark or Peggy. But we are going to have something in April, so stay tuned. And thank you again for all of you to be here and attending. And it will be up on our website probably by the end of the week. Mike, right, Todd? Probably.
Yeah, I'll have it up there by tomorrow.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. Thank you so
And-
much, Peggy, Mark, and Todd for doing this presentation as well. And see you in a few months.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
Bye.